You want to know how to actually analyze a commercial real estate investment? Well, you are in luck, because today my buddies Brandon Thornberry and Will Coleman are stopping by the studio, and we're diving into a multi-tenant retail center that they are buying, and they have a whole bunch of questions on to determine whether it's going to be a good investment or not. So let's dive on in. Brandon, appreciate you bringing this deal to me today. What are we diving into?
This is a retail center in Clarksville, pocket listing from a broker. It's about 53,000 square feet. It's got 9 units. The core tenants are Dollar General and Rent-A-Center, and then the other tenants are mom and pop operators. We are under contract to purchase this property and have come today for some guidance, wisdom.
Before we kind of dive into everything, I mean, tell me how y'all found this deal.
Yeah, so this was a pocket listing from a broker that I've built a relationship with. Interesting story about this deal. The seller was not willing to share financials without a signed contract.
That's always scary as hell.
Yeah, right? So we couldn't look under the hood until we went under contract. So I wasn't really even sure where to price it. And I just said, I gave him 2 offers. I said, hey, we'll do $1,650,000 just straight up, or $1,750,000 if you sell or finance. So I like to give a couple options, and he said, well, we'll do the $1,750,000 just straight up. And so at that, we're like at $33 a square foot, maybe.
Yeah, roughly.
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, $33 a square foot on the purchase of the building, and there's 4.5 acres. I mean, that 53,000 feet is not going to occupy all of that acreage, right? So there's plenty of opportunity there. $33 a foot is about what it would cost for you to build self-storage.
Yeah.
So retail should at least cost you probably 4 to 5 times that today. So I mean, right off the bat, you are well under replacement value on the purchase, which, I mean, that makes it a hell yeah deal for me, right? I love that. I mean, if you find anything that's $80 a foot, you're killing it. So 33 is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's exciting to see. I mean, it's always scary when you don't know really the financials of the deal.
Yeah, and the good news is, I mean, we built in an inspection period, a due diligence period. So really, if for some reason the financials came back really devastating, then we could cancel. And they did come back pretty devastating.
Of course they did.
That's one of the reasons we thought to reach out and chat and just kind of see if you could be a sounding board for us.
Yeah.
We'll go straight to the biggest challenge and opportunity. There's a 12,000 square foot space here that's renting for $120 a square foot.
Wow.
And there's a 15,000 square foot space here that's renting for $120 a square foot. For those that are listening and don't really know what that means, price per square foot is going to be calculated on an annual basis, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, if you're in California, you're hearing that, and you're probably like, oh, that's not bad.
That's pretty good because it's monthly.
What it should be.
Yeah. Right.
But this is an annual basis.
Yes.
$1.20 a foot.
$1.20.
Market's probably 9 times that.
We're underwriting to 10.
Yeah.
You know, so or actually 9, right?
Yeah.
$9 a foot.
We'd like to achieve 15.
Yeah.
$15 a square foot, but the deal works at $9 a square foot.
And I think the big thing to point out on this rent roll is the 2 that are highlighted in green are very large. They're huge spaces.
And so what we have discussed doing is giving potential tenants the options for us to divide these spaces up into smaller spaces.
Yep.
Well, a couple of things right off the bat that I like. I mean, you've got the stability here with a pretty decent chunk of the property.
Yep.
Right. So we're talking about over 20,000 square feet here is going to be stable. Everything else is month to month. But, you know, the other thing that I'm looking at is when these lease start dates began. And you've got tenants that have been month to month now that have been there since 2015, 10 years. These tenants want to stay. You could renegotiate with them to get them on longer term leases, maybe even increase their rent just a little bit. You know, I mean, some of them you're going to have to double. It's just, it's too unbelievably cheap.
I'm trying to triple them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, well, that's the good thing though. If like you come in and you double it, then you're great. This church, if you double it, we're talking $600 a month.
Yeah.
You know, which is still really, really cheap. The other thing that I think is really interesting, so you've got Rent-A-Center here at $6.25 a foot for 6,000 feet. So they've kind of set the new floor, in my opinion, of what the rents should be moving forward.
Right.
Because you've got a bigger brand that occupies a decent chunk of space, 6,000 feet, that's paying $625. So if they can pay that, then you know it's justified in that market. So we'll start kind of with that. That's the base level there. All right, let's look at the location. So we're in Clarksville. Let me just zoom out real quick, show it kind of relative to Nashville. So there you can see it's even a little further south of the Kentucky line. I mean, this is like right in downtown Clarksville.
Yeah, it's not far, and it's on a main corridor. It's got a high traffic count. There's a lot coming to this area.
Mm-hmm. Okay, see how giant this parking lot is?
It's huge.
Yep.
This corner right here could be perfect for an out parcel.
Sure.
And I'm talking about something like an Arby's, Taco Bell, Dunkin' Donuts is expanding like crazy. Scooter's Coffee is really expanding in Nashville. You could even do like one of those Smoothie King drive-throughs. Like it just depends on how much space you guys actually have.
Yeah, I love that.
And it's not going to really impact what's going on back there too much. And you might be able to sell that off for $250,000 to $500,000.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a nice little equity injection right there.
Absolutely.
That's a good idea.
I mean, you were talking about paying $1,750,000 for it. I mean, you're probably going to be bringing what, $500,000, $700,000 down.
Mm-hmm.
So you might be able to get half your equity back.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great idea.
There's some found revenue right there. I'll send you a bill.
I like it. Let's talk a little bit about the facelift.
Okay, so first thing that comes to mind when I see this property is just how far back the building sits. So that signage is very important for these tenants. And it looks like your typical old, really needs a little bit of help type of pylon sign, right? So I would look at ways to make a nicer sign. For whatever reason, this sign here to me just doesn't really pop out from the background. Definitely seal and stripe the parking lot. I mean, paint on a building like this is one of the best bangs for your buck that you can possibly get. I mean, right off the bat, you'll have tenants that are offering you 2 to 3 times what you're currently getting in rent just for that, right? So then you actually put a sales program together and you guys could really start raising rents here. The other thing that I see, this is just what I would call a parking lot desert. There's no green. Is there some sort of landscaping, just like adding in a couple islands with grass, something that just kind of breaks up this massive asphalt parking lot?
What is your gut, just while we're looking at this, on, like, if we divide up where that auction is at 6,000 square feet each, how easy or difficult will that be to lease post all these renovations?
So let's pull up our handy dandy notebook.
And before you answer that, would you go ahead and divide it, or would you put it out there in the market of, divisible?
It depends on kind of how you guys approach this, but what I would say is leave them in there. I mean, if they're paying, let them stay, and just let them know, like, hey, if you want to lease the whole space, we'll leave it as is. We'll give you new paint. We'll do whatever. Here's your new rate. Otherwise, just want you to know that we're probably going to split this up in 2. We're happy to move you into half of it.
Just to be clear, you would market it with them still there.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Because we were definitely in the mindset of like potentially not renewing them, and then once they're vacated, then market it.
So here's my thought on properties like this. Like you just don't know how long it's going to take to get it leased.
It could take 18 months.
It could be gone in 30 days. It could take 18 months.
Yeah.
Right. You just don't know. Here's what I would do. So you're going to have to go introduce yourselves to all the new tenants when you take over, right?
Yeah.
I know how you guys operate. I know you're already going to ask this, but what do you like about the property? What do you not like about the property? What could be changed? So that you can then, mentally map that and come back and say, hey, we're going to give you all new security cameras. We're going to replace all of your ceiling tiles and, whatever else they say, right? In exchange, we would like for you to go, into half of the space that you're currently occupying and pay us the same rate. And just kind of break that down and show it what it looks like.
Yeah.
And they may say, absolutely, we're not even using that space. I mean, it's kind of like when you first go to meet with the tenants, just go on a fact-finding mission.
Yeah, good call.
Ask them 1,000 questions.
Yep.
If you're open to it, I'd love to have you look through our actual like CapEx budget.
Yeah. Man, I love working with multifamily guys. Y'all have already over budgeted everything.
Okay.
This is great.
Okay, good.
So if we take the $180,000 in interior unit repairs and we add that to the $100,000 in TI reserves, and I divided that over 29,000 feet, which is your 2 big spaces, F and G here, and A.
Okay.
So those were just the 3 I assumed. You could probably pick any of them, really. That gives you 29,000 feet. That puts you right at $10 a square foot. So what I was thinking is, perfect, that should get you there pretty much on paint and carpet, right? Or paint and flooring, right? But then you've already got flooring baked into your budget. That gets you paint and ceiling tile replacements and maybe, a couple of new lights here and there and maybe some minor repairs and stuff like that. I think that's more than enough. Yeah, I mean, I think where you guys stand right now, you've got enough in the budget overall that if something happens, you kind of go, you know what, I guess we can't do this right now.
Yeah.
Let's spend the money on the urgent matter. I mean, as far as the rest of your CapEx budget goes, I think you might be a little high on the commission reserves.
Love to hear that.
The only reason being the way that commercial real estate commissions are structured, they're only going to be entitled to half of the commission upon lease execution, but you're also going to have the first month's rent and a security deposit at that time. So you might actually be able to use that first month's rent to cover a significant portion of that.
Nice.
And then the second payment, and of course, it depends on how you guys decide to structure, but this is typically what I do on my own properties. The second payment won't be due and payable until rent has commenced, right? Which means you've gotten a second check.
Yeah.
If you're covering the mortgage with everything else, you might be able to just use those funds to
Nice.
pay for the commissions and not have to actually raise for that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Maybe to wrap, we could just review the operating expenses, and then I think we could wrap from there. I mean, this has been tremendously helpful.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Maybe the main question to get your opinion on is repair and maintenance. Let's do the assumption that we're going to do all gross, so no CAM or anything like that. It was about $50,000 a year in HVAC repair in his historical P&L. So I've kind of removed that because we have $75K in HVAC repairs. I'm curious, what you think we should ballpark for repair and maintenance. We have pretty much just have a blanket 20 grand in there.
So you've basically got it at 35 cents a square foot for the repairs and maintenance.
We've literally just put in 20 grand. It's not based off dollar per square foot, but that's what it ends up being. It's about $1,600 a month.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's a bad number. I think that's a healthy number, but it's going to depend on your inspections on the front end and what you guys decide to replace. I mean, I would look at the roof and make sure that if it's a metal roof, that it hasn't been overly patched too many times. It could be pristine, and you could look at it and say, okay, well, if we start having issues, it's very easy for us to just patch parts of this, cover it in tar or whatever, instead of having to replace the entire thing. So. Versus if you see oh man, this is already I can see how in the next few years it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
1,600 might not be enough.
That's right.
Because you could very quickly. I mean, we know this with Peerless. Man, we've gotten some $12,000, $20,000 repair bills.
That's right.
Just because we've got some bigger roofs out there. So outside of that, I mean, I think 35 cents a square foot is a good number. One thing that I would note, since you do have real estate taxes going down, I would budget for them staying the same, because if you guys come in and start making, one, you're buying it for $1.7 million. So I would look at the millage rate and figure out or $1.75 million. I would look at what the millage rate would apply your taxes at.
So you'll love this. We're buying it for less than the tax assessed rate.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, never mind. Let's see. General and admin. I mean, $2,500 a year. Marketing, $2,500 a year. You're good there. I mean, if you end up hiring an outside brokerage, that'll go to zero. Depends on what you guys want to do there. Parking lot and trash cleanup.
I just increased what it was in his historical P&L by 3%.
I mean, that seems like kind of a high number to me.
Yeah.
We're talking about $9,700 a year.
I think that what's going on here is people are dumping stuff, and
he's having to pay
somebody to go in and remove trash.
Yep.
Ring cameras will help solve that.
Yeah.
What about utilities here? Because that seems really low. So I'm assuming some of the tenants are paying their own utilities.
Yeah, so they are paying all their own utilities.
Okay, so this is like parking lot lighting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, then that seems right on target. Lawn and landscaping. I mean, you guys have a couple of blades of grass and an asphalt parking lot. So no, I think you're good there. I mean, we're looking all in at $2.25 a foot. I'm gonna be really honest with you. I haven't seen numbers like that since 2017.
As far as it being low or high?
Yeah, it's really cheap. That's great.
Okay.
So it might need to be higher.
I mean, it could be. I mean, there's a couple of things. Look, insurance is one of those unknowns where it could just skyrocket tomorrow.
Yeah,
but
does $42,000 for insurance for this size of a property seem about right?
Yeah, I mean, I think 75 cents a foot makes sense for the type of construction.
If you want to go to the cash flows tab, that can kind of summarize.
Perfect.
Let's
look at the cash flows.
Those are basically our NOIs each year. So obviously, the first 2 years we're losing money.
Right.
So we would raise capital to pay for the debt payments. The big thing that makes this a deal is we think we have the ability to refinance 50 to 75% of the capital out in year 3. And then you can see it still cash flows extremely well after that. So that's kind of the play on this one is heavy value add. And this is assuming it takes us 3 years or 2 years to get to the rents that we're looking at, which we could get there much faster than that. Refinance, and then, you know, it's a velocity of money play. It's not necessarily a cash flow play. That's the deal IRR from there. We would then go in and decide what do we want to pay our LPs versus the GP, and that will impact the LP. So that's not the LP IRR.
This is deal level?
This is deal level.
Yeah.
And we can go to standard waterfall to see the LP IRR, but we're still dialing that one in.
So gross potential rent is $3,350,000. Your effective gross rent, is that going in today, is 2.7?
So that effective is the sum of 7 years.
Okay, because I was going to say there's no way.
Yeah, so like if you go over 144,
so it's 483 is your effective gross, or is your gross potential income, and 144 is your effective gross.
Exactly.
Income.
So that's year 1, and that's assuming basically
That's assuming spaces are vacant.
40% of the building's vacant for the most part.
Yeah, so that's making the assumption that you guys are actually going to kick those tenants out.
Exactly.
To
That's
market
right.
the space, which you're not going to do.
Yeah.
Or which I wouldn't recommend to do. So, I mean, basically, let's assume that your net operating income, I mean, this is the thing I love, because people are going to see this and they're going to freak out and be like, why would you ever buy that? So 16,823 divided by 1,750,000. I mean, we're talking about an incoming cap rate of 0.96%.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? It's very small. But that's because you got to look at the potential and what's going on here.
Right.
It is so far under market rent that in 12 months, you should be able to get it up to $160,000 a year, basically 10x that, and get it to a 10% cap rate.
I was going to say, I think the projected cap is like 9 to 10% once we get it moving.
To me, that's a home run deal. And get it at 1% cap rate and take it to a 10% cap rate in a single year. Yeah, that's not too bad.
Nice.
Not too bad. I mean, and the thing is that's really interesting is it just goes up after that,
There
right?
you
Then
go.
you get to
There's-
like a 15% cap rate.
There's your yield on cost, which is basically, you know,
Yep.
yeah, so 10%, 11%. That's pretty solid, and that's our NOI divided by our purchase price plus our renovation costs.
That's tough to beat.
We'll have
Well, that's
to-
awesome, guys. Man, I think you've got a home run deal.
Thanks for taking a look at it.
Absolutely. I'm glad to have dived into it. Yeah, if you guys need anything else as you're going through the process, let me know.
Appreciate
Awesome.
So there you have it for analyzing a commercial real estate investment with tenants in place. But what if the property is either vacant or you don't like the tenants that are currently there? Check out this video here on how I converted a car wash into micro restaurants so that you can do a value add project as well.